you prepare as thoroughly as you can. The guys play their asses off.
Playoffs? Don't talk about playoffs. You kidding me? Playoffs? I just hope we can win a game. Another game.
Listen, we talking about practice. Not a game, not a game, not a game. We talking about practice.
That you probably won't say it again.
I bet I do.
Okay.
Chris?
If you want to crown them, then crown their ass. If they are who we thought they were, and we let them off the hook.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Gather around, SKOL brothers and sisters. This is SKOL Ranch, brought to you by Minnesota Sports Talk. I got a special guest. Tyler Forness is in the house. Hey, Tyler, tell us all about where we can find you, man.
Absolutely. As you can see right above there, you can find me on Twitter at The Real Forno. I refuse to call it X. It's Twitter. We all know it's Twitter. They can change the name. It's still tweeting. It's still Twitter. I am the Vikings beat writer for A to Z Sports. It's a smaller up-and-coming company, but they really prioritize a lot of the good stuff while doing like the bulk writing, which is what everybody else needs you to do, which is that, what I did at Vikings Wire, but they really prioritize some of the deeper dive analysis, which is kind of where my stuff is. You can also find me on my channel, Vikings First and SKOL, where I have the Real Forno show twice a week and do the post-game show and sometimes some other stuff with producer Dave, including once draft time comes around, we'll do SKOL Search once again. And then I'm also on Purple Daily, doing the show Meat and Potatoes with Judd Zolgad. And then once draft time comes around, we'll fire back up Purple Daily on draft and talk a bunch of just nerdy, gritty football stuff. That's what I do, and I love it.
And in the offseason, you guys did a lot of draft analysis, right? That's what you went on there for?
Oh, absolutely. The NFL draft is kind of one of my fortes. I don't do as much film watching during the year as I'd like because I have to focus so much on the Vikings. But once December and January roll around, it's diving into NFL draft prospects, and we're going to watch a lot of D-line and cornerbacks this year because those are very, very deep positions in the NFL draft, and of course the Vikings need them.
And yeah, good timing for us because that's been a sticking point for us. I'll get into like some guys that maybe stood out and surprised us this last game, but let's actually start with that. In what world did you think we would have got both JJ McCarthy and Dallas Turner when you were doing draft analysis prior to the season?
I actually liked JJ McCarthy coming into the 2023 season. And I actually said he was my favorite of the quarterback prospects, but I didn't really know what to think of him because we had such a limited sample size, and I still thought we had too limited of a sample size to really be certain. He only played in 7 fourth quarters last year across 15 games. Like, to me, that takes away some of the things that you really want to see from a college quarterback. And it's not to say that he can't do them. Like, can you put the team on your back with any kind of relative consistency and carry them to a win? Can you deliver that final drive to be able to get the victory? And there just wasn't a huge sample size of him being able to do that. And he did do it, but I just felt like it was too limited for me to say for certain, I know I can trust this guy moving forward, which is one of the reasons why I was a little lower on him than a lot of draft media. But I did like him. I thought there was a lot to work with, and I was kind of lower on Dallas Turner too for some of the same reasons. I just thought he was way too raw for a Nick Saban prospect. Like, there were just so many little nuanced things that he just wasn't doing, and it looked like he just relied way too much on his speed. But then for what Brian Flores wants to do, when I went back and looked at other film, which is what I did once we drafted him, I kind of saw the vision, the fluidity in his hips to like drop back in coverage. Like, he was running with running backs. It was kind of wild. But if you were to ask me that before the year, I would have said, I don't know. If the Vikings have 2 picks, maybe 50%. Because I had no idea what to think of McCarthy. And Dallas Turner went into the year as one of the top edge prospects, and then exited the year also as one of the top edge prospects. So it was good to get both of those talents and both guys who have a lot of upside. But like, it wasn't like we were talking about Drake May and Caleb Williams, who looked like the number 1 and number 2 overall pick from the middle of 2022 all the way through 2023. And obviously May went 3rd with Jaden Daniels coming out of nowhere. But it's those two guys were really interesting to watch throughout their final years because they had like the idea was really good with both of them, and hopefully they can continue putting it together in Minnesota.
Now, you just mentioned two names. Jaden Daniels, I think, just got like Rookie of the Week or something like that, and Caleb Williams looked like he was got a participation ribbon in the Bears' victory. Tell me what you think about his first outing.
Oh, look, here's the thing with Caleb Williams. He's going to have to adapt to the NFL. And honestly, I thought he should have had a redshirt year like Pat Mahomes. You're going to draw a lot of the same comparisons with Mahomes and Williams based on play style because Mahomes is so great at extending the play and making these Superman throws and getting chunk plays off of it. But it took him a long time to learn to just settle down. Hey, if the defense is going to give you a 10-yard gain, take it and then move on and then try to get the big one. And it took him a while to figure that out. Caleb Williams hasn't figured that out. He hasn't figured out how to play consistently and successfully within structure. And that manifested itself in a huge way against Tennessee. He took a 19-yard sack on a screen pass because he
Running backwards. Yeah.
and tried to scramble around. And one of the things with him, he's going to deal with NFL athletes now and NFL spacing. And it's going to be so much harder for him to make those plays that he made at USC. So there's going to be a huge adjustment for him. And then Jaden Daniels, he's playing in a fake offense. Cliff Kingsbury does not run a serious NFL offense. And they have issues on the offensive line. They don't have a lot of depth of the receiver, especially after trading Jahan Dotson. Like they're starting a third rounder in Luke McCaffrey, who's solid, who looks like he could be a decent player. And Olamide Zaccheaus, I think is how you pronounce his name, who's bounced around from the Falcons to the Eagles and now is with Washington. Jaden Daniels also takes too many Looney Tunes hits. Like I comped him to Wile E. Coyote just because he likes to run into getting absolutely destroyed. And he weighs like 210 pounds and looks more frail than that. So Daniels is going to take an adjustment too, but he's actually in an offense, even though it's fake, it kind of suits him because of how he played in college and some of the transitional stuff to the NFL, at least initially. It's probably good for him, but Washington's not going to be good this year. And I think we're starting to see some of these rookie quarterbacks crashed back down to earth. Hey, CJ Stroud is the anomaly, and we need to give these guys time and be patient with them.
So what did you think? And I'll ask you about Dallas Turner and JJ McCarthy again, and then we'll later on. I'm going to bring up Sam Darnold at the end here. Let's save the best for last. Now with JJ McCarthy in the OTAs, there wasn't a whole lot to be excited about. I don't feel.
Mm-hmm.
And and then we got to the preseason camp, and we started to see things that we got us excited. And then I kind of gave him credit, and I was going to do an apology video until I got his knee hurt of that first start that he had, because the something I saw in that was that, you know, he had the interception and then came back and played awesome with that long throw down to, I think it was Tristan Jackson, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
And then he had that almost fumble, and he did, you know, which would rattle anybody, especially a rookie, to throw a touchdown just right after that. So I kind of went back and like, you know what? I need to give him like a full letter grade better than what I did after that game, because the way he bounced back, what was impressive. So how do you feel like, did your mind change from your pre-draft to the OTAs to where he almost became our starter?
Not really. And I think that needs a lot of context because I always thought he was a guy that needed time. He needed time to grow. He needed time to develop, and he needed time to fix some of those mechanical things. And I got a lot of heat because I said I didn't think JJ McCarthy was ready to start. And that wasn't because he was bad. It was because there was very much inconsistency with how he used his mechanics. He was not mechanically sound. And even in that start, you saw some of those old habits kind of creep back up onto him in that preseason game. I just thought they needed to fix those and they needed to get those. One of the things I always remembered, because I'm a humongous Florida Gator fan. You can't actually see it, but right above my head is a picture. It's really bad right now. Right above my head's a picture of the swamp. And when Tim Tebow came out, one of the things that they talked about incessantly was him adjusting his throwing motion. Well, they said, and it has stuck with me all these years, It takes about 10,000 reps to create something into muscle memory. And with McCarthy, he probably never got to those 10,000 reps over the course of the summer. Probably came close, but it's a lot to adjust those footwork things. And once you adjust it, I think it's going to work out really, really well. But it takes time. And you saw during practice, he'd make some wild throws, and then it looked like he'd be mechanically sound, but he wasn't. And he would just sail an out route where he shouldn't. And he would just miss. And those kind of things were still happening a little bit too often from my perspective. And I just thought, hey, take your time. The wild stuff is great. We're seeing a picture of what this can be, and what this can be is pretty damn incredible. But there's still little inconsistencies that too many people are not wanting to admit that are still there. And he just needs time. If you put him out there, I felt way more comfortable than I did before the preseason game. Like, okay, if we put him in there, I think he can be successful enough where he's not going to damage himself. It's one of the things with quarterback, and same with cornerback as well. You have to be so mentally tough because you're going to make a lot of mistakes. How do you handle those mistakes? Are you Peyton Manning, who holds the NFL record for most interceptions in a season, and he went on to be one of the best quarterbacks to ever play? Or are you Ryan Leaf, who crumbled with any sort of adversity? And every individual player is different, and you have to be able to understand, can I put this guy in a situation where he can fail, and can he bounce back from that and learn, or will he collapse? Because you have to get quarterback right in this league. If you don't, you're probably fired and you don't get another chance. So I thought, hey, take it easy. Be really chill about it. Take as much time as you need. Even if you think he's ready, take another couple weeks because you want to get this right. And I'll tell you, he really impressed me so much in that preseason game. I'm like, all right, maybe we can deal with like, hey, he threw that pick and then was lights out. It was almost like he just kind of woke up. Maybe he will be fine mentally, because that's something as a draft analyst, I can't tell you. I cannot tell you that he's mentally ready. I cannot tell you that he can handle this or he can't, because I don't talk to him on a regular basis. I don't see him in these meeting rooms. That's why I always had that ambiguity. They have to know. They have to be comfortable with what they're seeing and how he's handling this process to make those decisions. But I feel a lot better about McCarthy moving forward because of how he progressed throughout training camp and that preseason game than I was going in, because going in, I still had a lot of questions. I still have a few, but I think Vikings fans can feel pretty comfortable they got the guy.
Now, just a few things about Dallas Turner, if you could. So I wasn't expecting him to play as much as he did.
Mm-hmm.
I was just going to go back to this. We don't play rookies. We just don't trust rookies, except for Ed Ingram for some reason. I'm going to have you talk about him next. But we seem to just put him out there and never take him out. But Dallas Turner got a lot of playing time and got his sack. How'd you feel he performed?
I thought he was okay. I think one of the big things with rookies, especially when you're playing in the trenches, it's just different. There's just a different kind of muscle, a different kind of athleticism. Like, you're a lot of times, and I talk about this with corner. If you are the best corner on a team in the SEC, you're probably like a cornerback 4 in the NFL, like on aggregate. Like, there are going to be some studs, and there are going to be some guys where it's like, this guy shouldn't even play in the league, even though he's really good in college. And I think Turner was dealing with some of that on Sunday, where you're going up against guys like Andrew Thomas. Andrew Thomas is a top 5 tackle in football. He's really, really good. And that's just a different level of athlete, different level of grown man strength. And I just think he needed a little bit of time to kind of figure some of that out. He needs time to adapt to the game. But the sack was awesome to see. He played that stunt perfectly. And I think continuing to get him in rotations in some of these plays and just ask him to do the minimal. Hey, you're going to come in here and this is what I want you to do. And get him in good situations and let him continue to grow and develop and learn in the meeting rooms. And I think you could have something pretty special. But overall, if you take the sack out, like it was okay. I wasn't too impressed, but I also wasn't like, okay, this guy's a disaster. It was a solid debut.
Now, I'm going to stick, before I go to Ingram, might as well stay on the defense as far as Harrison Phillips just signed a big contract.
Mhm.
Well, not necessarily a big contract. You actually feel like it was a really a really good deal on our part. Like you said, maybe at 1/3 the cost, if I'm not mistaken. Tell us about that. What does that mean for us? What did it mean for him?
So it's interesting. The way it was framed was 2 years, 19 million. In reality, it was 2 years, 15 million, because some of that money that was kind of looped into that 19 million was money that they took out of this year's base salary and made into a signing bonus.
Wow.
So the Vikings got a really good deal. I think Harrison Phillips is an average to above average defensive lineman in this league, and you're paying him peanuts. Chris Jones is in a different stratosphere as far as how much defensive tackles are getting paid. The top of the market, in my opinion, is $28 million. Harrison Phillips is now being paid a quarter of that, at like 7.5. That's a really, really good deal for the Minnesota Vikings. He is a very solid player who's probably best off playing like a 0 technique or 1 technique. I mean, you can slide him to 3 if you get another big body guy. Maybe if Taki Taimani takes a step, then you have Harrison Phillips playing a 2 gap role as more like a 2I. But just a really solid player who understands how to play gap control, how to shed blocks, and make plays in the backfield. Like, he's only 28 years old. He's going to turn 30 in 2026, the final year of his deal. And if he stinks at all this year and next year, guess what? $1.6 million to cut him in 2026. So the Vikings got a guy who they really like, who's young still for the long term. They have the cap flexibility, which Kwesi loves. And it feels like Harrison Phillips is the kind of guy who wanted to stay and was okay maybe taking a little bit less here than trying the open market because he likes it here.
Yeah, and I feel like Kwesi did, and I feel like Darisaw, if he waited at the end of the season, stayed healthy, made the Pro Bowl, if not all pro, because he's that talented, we would have been paying through our nose. So it almost feels like we got a little bit of a discount. And I've been saying pretty much ever since we got the stadium and the practice facilities is we've been a destination franchise, and that culminated into the players voting us number 1 and then number 2 last year of places to come play according to the NFLPA. So it's almost like they do want to stay here, right? And they are taking less money to be on this team, and you kind of love that as a fan.
Absolutely. And I'm very pro player. Get as much money as you can. But if you want to take less to stay in a spot, I'm not going to, like rag on you. Take what you think is fair. Take what you want. And he wanted to be here, and that rocks.
And one of the things Spielman, he would talk about, and I hear him on NFL radio, is that, he'd try to weigh the options for them. Like, hey, we can give you this money now, or you could risk injury. And I think that weighs a lot into their decisions, especially with Darisaw, because he has been injured, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But is there any surprises you felt on the defensive line? Because going into this season, I put it as our weakest, group. But it surprised me in this last game. How did you feel about it?
I still think it's the weakest group, and I don't think it's very close. I thought
How
Jerry
about Tillery? It looked like he was able to, to get after the quarterback a little bit.
And that's always been Tillery's thing, even coming out of Notre Dame when he was a first-round pick by the Chargers. Like, Tillery has talent. He has athleticism and size and explosiveness. He just hasn't been able to piece it all together for whatever reason. And maybe in this scheme, he'll be able to kind of unlock some of that. I thought Tillery was fine. He was a solid rotational player, which I think is going to be his role long-term if he sticks around in the National Football League. I don't think he's this transitional player. I don't think he's going to be this great star for us. But if he can be a Jonathan Bullard level player, solid, consistent, then I think it's a big home run for the price that we're paying, which is, I think, $3.25 or $3.5 million. Like, that rocks. Just be a solid enough player, and I think everybody will be happy with the situation. But we can't look at Tillery as, hey, he's this rare find. There's a reason why 2 organizations have already given up on him in 5 years in the league. Like, he is a first round bust.
Now, potential difference makers for us, and one of them already kind of is, but Greenard and Van Ginkel, how big of pickups were those? And, how much better of a fit are they than Daniil Hunter?
Oh, it's not even close. They're a better fit. And that was something that I think is really important with how Brian Flores wants to play defense. It's not always about talent. Fit matters. Daniil Hunter didn't fit what Brian Flores wanted to do at all. But because Daniil is supremely talented
Yeah,
and Brian Flores
talent.
is a great schemer, they were able to make it work. Daniil Hunter is probably going to have a better year in Houston this year than he had last year with the Vikings because he's in a system that he fits like a glove. Grenard fits this like a glove. And they kicked him inside a bunch. Grenard had 5 pressures and he looked great. He was able to move guys. He was able to get a lot of pressure. He didn't get the sacks, but pressures matter more because they're more sustainable. Sacks are just 100th percentile outcome when it comes to a pressure. And they got 5 sacks on 26 pressures. That's a pretty good rate for the Vikings. Van Ginkel, he's played for Flores. Flores knows exactly what he's getting. He's a guy that's got inside linebacker and edge rusher experience. That kind of versatility is going to be huge for what Flores likes to do because he likes to have guys all up on the line and then drop some. So having that experience as a traditional linebacker is going to be a really big factor too. I just think this Vikings edge room is significantly better than last year because they not only have dudes, they have athleticism, but they all fit. They all fit what Brian Flores wants to do. And I think that matters a hell of a lot more than a little bit more talent.
Now, do you feel as comfortable as I do right now about our cornerback room, which surprises the absolute crap out of me?
The
No,
cornerback room, I'm really torn on how Quasito Fomensa feels about the cornerback room as a construct.
I mean
Does
at
he
least the
really?
starters on like the top 3 guys.
I don't know how Quasito Fomensa values corner. I feel like he believes it's a weakling system. Don't have a disaster. And I've always related it to the 2021 Cincinnati Bengals. They had 3 solid cornerbacks. None of them were difference makers. None of them were great, but they were all solid. They were all good players, like 6 or 7 out of 10. And Eli Apple got picked on in the Super Bowl, but overall that season, he was solid. He was a good football player. Same with Awuzie and Mike Hilton. Sometimes that's all you need. It's just solid players. And I think that's what this group has. You have Stephon Gilmore, Shaq Griffin, Byron Murphy Jr. They're all going to give you relatively high floors. They're not going to be disasters, but they're not going to be great either. And if you can have that kind of solid, consistent play throughout the season, I think that can matter a whole hell of a lot. And you'd like to have more youth in the cornerback room, but that kind of got stripped away from you with the tragic passing of Kyrie Jackson and the torn ACL Mekhi Blackman. It's not like Kwesi didn't try. Stuff happened outside of his control, and he had to adapt and adjust to fix it, which is why he brought in Gilmore and why he brought in Fabian Moreau. And now they have to spend the offseason trying to figure out how to build this unit to fortify it for the long term, because you can't really count on Blackman anymore. If he comes back 100%, that's great. That's huge. But you have to try and figure things out outside of him, because otherwise it's just a Caleb Evans and Dwight McGlothern in the room. And like, I think there's potential with both of those guys. Obviously, Evans has started a lot of games, and I think he is a very solid player. I think the last 4 games of last year was an abject disaster, but he was very good until then. So is he just mentally just shot, kind of like how Xavier Rhodes fell off a cliff? Or is there something else where we can continue to extract some really good play? I think that's an intriguing element, but they're going to have to rebuild this room in some way, shape, or form next year, because it won't be with a bunch of 1-year deals.
Yeah, and the moment that kind of warmed my heart the most in this game, and it just made me happy, was Harrison Smith getting a pick in the end zone. How about you? What was it? What's it like? I don't think he's done. I don't think this is his last year. I think he's going to stick around to see what he can do with this window we got.
I think Harrison Smith, look, and I mean this in a nice way, he's just a weird dude. He spent the summer doing construction with his brother. And he's like, oh, I should probably think about football now. Like,
that's normal to me, man.
Yeah, but
these guys are dude shit to me, man.
These guys are NFL players. He's literally working construction during the off season. That's one, awesome, but 2, it just shows that he's just an interesting dude. he did an interview once. I want to say it was a few years after he was drafted. He's like, "Oh yeah, I still drive my '02 Tahoe. It's got like 190,000 miles on it." He had just signed his contract extension in 5 years, 50 million, and he's talking about how he's just going to drive this '02 Tahoe until it dies. Like he's just built differently than a lot of these people, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. But I also think that could be the reason why he's just like, "Nah, I'm good. I'll just go do construction and hang out with my brother." Like that wouldn't shock me one bit. And I do think he may have some left in the tank, but I also don't think he wants to be that guy who just completely falls off a cliff and people don't remember him as well as they probably should because he's been great for a long time.
Yeah. Now, switching to the offense, I think the guy that kind of, I was like, oh no, here we go again, was Ed Ingram. And you wrote Ed Ingram had his warts throughout the game dealing with stud Dexter Lawrence, but I thought he showed a lot of improvement throughout the game. I was his rookie year, I was a complete like defender. I said, You guys are bitching about because he had two splash bad plays, and then I think he was solid the rest of the game. Then last year preseason, I thought he was absolutely awful, and I was banging the drum for Blake Brandel to take over for him. I feel pretty vindicated considering how well he played. We'll talk about him, but you felt like you didn't hear his name the rest of the game, right? So it sounds like your viewpoint on it was right on. Tell me what you think of his overall performance.
So you kind of have to write some of it off because Dexter Lawrence is not quite Aaron Donald good, but he's like on a similar level to just being so incredibly good. If you get your ass whooped, it just kind of is what it is. Some guys were just going to whoop your ass and there's nothing you can do about it. And I think Lawrence is one of those guys. I also think it's interesting that I rarely saw Lawrence line up over Blake Brandel. So I think that's kind of an intriguing element here too. But I'm a Ed Ingram defender, I guess you could say, because people talk about him like he's literally the worst player that's ever played football.
He's not.
And
We've seen worse.
He's
at guard.
He is an average starting guard in the NFL. And one of the frustrating things that I always challenge people, go get NFL Plus and watch the film and then like watch the intricacies of how he plays. And I think it's two reasons why people don't like him. One, PFF says he has a lot of pressures. PFF also had him as the 34th ranked offensive guard last year in overall grade, pass blocking grade, and run blocking grade, which to me says that is an average starting guard in the NFL. And that's all I've ever wanted for this team. Get an average starting guard and don't be a disaster. Problem is with that Ingram's play style, it gives people sometimes maybe I don't want to phrase this like poorly because it can give them a sour taste in their mouth because I think Ed Ingram's biggest comp is Mike Tyson. He is a heavyweight boxer who only wants to knock you out. He does not want to fight with finesse. He does not want to fight to go the distance. He wants to knock you out in round one. And that's how he plays. He tries to punch you down into the ground. And if he misses or doesn't get enough strength on it, that guy will come in and make the play. He does not grab and drive. He punches you. And that play style can work, but it has warts. And I think that play style is a lot of the reason why people don't like him very much, because it can come out in a very poor way. Like I'm a fan of his as an overall player. I don't think he's this massive difference maker. I just think people stick too quickly to PFF grades, to like looking at just overall pressure numbers without really trying to understand the why behind some of it.
Yeah, the thing that really just rubs my craw when I do see him, and again, I agree with everything you're saying about him being average or about at least an average guard, because we've seen bad offensive guard play before, but just not picking up, not being able to recognize stunts, and guys will run by him without him even touching them, and that's one or two times a game, but it damn near get Nick Mullins killed in the preseason. And he did get kind of manhandled, like I think that first drive. But I want to talk about Blake Brandel, who I banged the drum for. It's really odd to see a 6'7" guard Well, one of the
Mhm.
things I saw with Reisner when I was banging the drum like with everybody trying to get him to come on our team on Twitter was independent hands. Like they'll block with one hand and then it gets chopped down. They get the other one up and they recover. And I thought Brandel had that much like Reisner did. And I saw that in preseason last year, and I thought, God, this is something that Ed Ingram just does not do in pass blocking. He's got two, like you said, he punches both hands. He doesn't have that feel like these guys do. And Brandel played so well this first game. Is it sustainable? Do you think he is that player that will solidify that left guard spot for years to come?
I do, and I'm going to be 100% honest. I was not a big fan of Dalton Reisner, and I didn't think I didn't think they should bring him back at all. Because
I mean, I felt like he played pretty average too. I agree with you, man.
I like people said, "Oh, he was such an improvement over Ezra Cleveland." I'm like, no,
Yeah.
Ezra Cleveland was pretty good, and it's just one of those things where, like, I think Brandel was solid, and one of the things coming out of Oregon State was he just couldn't, he
was
just
a
couldn't deal
tackle,
with
right? He was a left tackle.
he couldn't deal with speed, and not being able to deal with speed, uh, that's a big problem for tackles. And the couple games that he played in 2022 when Darius had that concussion, he was fine. He got a little bit of help, but then once he got that chip and he got himself set in position, he wasn't letting guys past him. And I think, okay, if you can eliminate the speed element, maybe he can be successful at guard. He's rather tall at 6'7", but he's only got 33.5-inch arms, which is not, you don't want guards to have super long arms because that can actually be a little bit of a deterrent as far as really getting into guys in their chest when they're coming like right at you like that. It's different for tackles because there's a little bit of wind up, but yeah, I thought he was solid. I want to see more. I want to see more of a proof of concept consistently. And the first game was a good start. Now do it again and then do it again. And you know what? If that works, Quacio Fomensa got a starting guard for $3.13 million over the course of the next 3 years. That's how you moneyball. You have to find your edges, and this could be a huge edge for the Vikings.
Yeah, I loved when they really said, hey, he deserves this shot. You know, his OC in the offseason was like, he's earned this. And then they go sign Dalton Reisner, and then I'm like, oh, they're putting him at backup right guard. What the hell? All right, Brandel's going to get his shot. Now, you wrote down, you also tweeted out Kevin O'Connell's turning into a schematic genius, and I'm here for it. His play call on Jalen Naylor's touchdown shows some serious film study from the college game. Now, I was a big time Naylor guy. When we drafted him in the 6th round, I called him our most value pick of the draft. I felt like he was a guy that got hurt in college. He was much like a Diggs who got hurt and just didn't get to show the production. I don't think he's as talented as Diggs was, but I just thought that was a similar situation. And his senior year, he was set for 1,000 yards before he broke his hand. And he's been a health problem. Now he showed that touchdown. He showed he could play in preseason and in spots he could play. Do you feel like Naylor as I think he could be a 2 in this league, and he's our 3, and I'm happy with it. And I'm not too sad about just switching him out with Tristan Jackson either. I like both of them. What do you feel about our receiver room?
Just stay healthy, dude. I need to see you stay healthy for more than 5 minutes before I crown you. To me, like that play that you mentioned, that was way more about Addison and specifically Jefferson than it was about Naylor. Anybody could have been in that spot, and as long as you perform your job, that's an easy walk-in touchdown. But I want to see Naylor just not collapse, not be an injury problem, because he's missed games with an ankle, multiple games with a hamstring, last 4 games of the 2023 season with a concussion. You got to stay healthy if you want to play. Mike Zimmer said it best his first year in Minnesota. Can't make the club in the tub. You got to stay healthy. I don't know if he's secured wide receiver 3 yet based on snap counts. I think there's a lot of nuance with the snap counts because Addison left the game in the 3rd quarter last week, but Brandon Powell outsnapped him 30-26. So I think we may be in a position where we platoon wide receiver 3 where they just want to have like certain matchups exploited. But Naylor has the potential to be a really good player. I just got to see him stay healthy for more than 5 seconds.
Yeah, it's 100%. I mean, that's what I'm saying. I'm so happy that Tristan Jackson is just every year progressing.
Mhm.
Every year it seems like he's progressing to where I think he's solidified a spot on the team. But you did make the point about schematic, and I might as well just jump into Sam Darnold because it seemed like everybody was open. He didn't have to make. I think the tightest throw was, and it's crazy because he threw the touchdown 3-yard touchdown to Jefferson, but Addison was just scampering wide ass open in the back of the end zone. It seemed, and then on that Naylor touchdown, heck, Munt was wide ass open. He would have walked in if he couldn't get it to Naylor. So it just felt schematically that we were more effective in the red zone. And I guess I'll give a shout out to Aaron Jones too, that just makes things happen.
Mhm.
But it just seems schematically that Kevin O'Connell got it. We protected Sam Darnold, and he got wide receivers open. And I feel I give so much credit for O'Connell to get Sam Darnold ready to and play, as flawless as a game as he could, um, to to win this first game with this, because I think it was that important with our schedule coming up.
Yeah, I agree. One of the big things with Darnold is he's never had a good infrastructure. He's never really had good talent around him when he's been the starter. He's never had good coaching. He's never had good weapons. He's never felt like, hey, I'm the guy. I'm the alpha. If I make a mistake, I'm not getting yanked. He kind of has all of that here. And with that kind of confidence, with that ability that he has, he can hopefully elevate things to a different level. And I saw a lot of really good from Darnold. The stats are whatever. The interception wasn't really his fault. His arm got
Got
hit by
hit.
Dexter Lawrence. But the way he was composed in the pocket, the way he was making decisions, the way he acted and threw under pressure, it was all great stuff. And it was all stuff to continue building upon. Now do it again next week. Now do it again the week after that. You do those things. I think we could be sitting in a situation with the 2004 Drew Brees with the San Diego Chargers, where you have to decide, do you get rid of a good quarterback despite having just drafted one? And that could be a very tough decision.
I think we'll have a civil war in the Vikings community. Honestly, it seems like I think everybody kind of felt like Sam Darnold will, if he plays good, he'll just go sign somewhere else for 35, 40 million. And then we'll
Mhm.
we'll just go with our player. I think people kind of resigned to that fact that he'll go, be a, you know, you know, be a Baker Mayfield and go play somewhere else. But do you give up a quarterback that takes you to the playoffs or wins a playoff game? Do you do that? I know it's week one, so we have a long ways to go. But I think one of the things that's helping him is that he was under the radar this whole offseason. They weren't interviewing him. They were interviewing JJ McCarthy or people about JJ McCarthy,
Mhm.
or you would see hot mics of JJ McCarthy and Justin Jefferson talking. But you weren't talking about Sam Darnold. Now he's the man. And it's like, okay, this is your team. I felt like we didn't lose any games because JJ McCarthy got hurt. I felt he wouldn't have won us more games than Sam Darnold. So I wasn't too worried about it. I was just worried about the depth then. And I would like to see him healthy, not hurt, right? But
Mhm.
it might have benefited Sam Darnold. I felt is that you're right. He is the man. This is his team. He's captain. He's showing so much confidence now, and I think it's instilled upon him by the coaches.
Yeah, there's so many things that go into a quarterback being successful. And if he can have success here, like we're talking about a Geno Smith situation, somebody's going to give him a chance. Somebody's going to hopefully see that the infrastructure he had and give it to him. Like Baker Mayfield was never a bad quarterback. He was always in a
I was
situation
high.
in Cleveland. Like Cleveland wasn't a fit for him once Kevin Stefanski took over. Baker likes it static. He likes to run his receivers, don't motion. He gets to kind of see the field from the shotgun and make reads and plays. And guess what? It worked really well, and they almost made the NFC Championship game last year. And he's in a great situation there. Like that matters so much where you have the right like support system around you. And Cleveland wasn't that, because that kind of offense where Stefanski runs with a lot of play action bootlegs and stuff. Baker, that wasn't Baker. He wasn't comfortable with that. And you know what? The results showed. And once he got to Tampa, everything clicked. And maybe that's just kind of the same here with Darnold. Like this system is very quarterback friendly as long as you are mentally in the game, because it's also considered very difficult for quarterbacks, but it tells you, hey, this guy's going to be open, throw the dig. Okay. Like once you kind of get that kind of conceptually, like Nick Mullins was successful. The only thing with Nick Mullins is he'd make a couple bozo throws every game that would cripple your team.
Just doesn't have the arm strength to make some of those plays. Just he doesn't have it. But Sam Darnold does. And
Mhm.
one thing I think we need to see improve over the next few weeks is to get the play call in there and get it on time, get the play off. I think there was a couple times we could have easily got, not even counting the penalty or the timeouts, but a couple times I saw that shit at 0 and we hadn't snapped it yet. We got lucky, I felt, in a lot of those plays. So,
Mhm.
but
Yeah,
hey, let's end on this. I loved us getting Aaron Jones. I think our previous running backs are one cut and go. Aaron Jones, I feel like, is a guy that makes his own hole. Like he's shifty enough. He falls forward, falls backwards. He
Mhm.
bounces it outside. He he's decisive. And I just felt like he's given us a different aspect at running back that we haven't had in a while. And I'm Diggs. He make people miss in the open field, no problem. He's fast as hell, a home run hitter. But in 2022, he was getting tackled behind the line of scrimmage a lot. Aaron Jones could have been tackled behind the line of scrimmage, but he was still getting yardage for us. And who has the Vikings embraced more than Aaron Jones, or on in the same direction or the opposite direction? Aaron Jones has embraced us to where he felt like he wanted to do skull chants on the sidelines as a Packer.
Mhm.
He's endeared himself to this team. Tell me what your overall impression of Aaron Jones is so far, man.
I hope he stays healthy, man, because he's got great vision. He's not really truly elite at anything. He's just kind of just a well-rounded back.
Yeah,
He's like a souped-up version of Alexander Madison, and I don't mean that as an insult. Madison had a little bit of everything, but he just didn't have
I
the
could
juice
see.
to be able to capitalize on it. Jones has the juice to break it outside and take it for 10 yards. Madison would get 3. And those little things make such a big difference in the NFL. And if Jones stays healthy, I really like what he can bring for this football team. And I think Ty Chandler's a great 1B. That they had a relatively 60-40 snap share with Jones getting 30 and Chandler getting 19. So they're getting a relatively good split. Jones is, not playing a ton versus expectations. So I'm pretty happy with it so far. I just want to see him stay healthy and him still be productive, because last year was his most productive efficiency year that he had in his entire career with a 62% success rate, which is pretty bonkers for a running back to have that kind of success.
Now, we put last year, and we'll end with this: the San Francisco 49ers. Last year, you even had colleagues calling for us to tank. Um,
Mhm.
I had colleagues wanting us to tank, and we went out there and beat San Francisco on Monday Night Football, and they haven't beat us, I think, at home in 32 years. What's your what's your What's your crystal ball vision of this game coming up? And we'll end on that. You're calling it, man. What's going to happen in this game?
I think the Vikings are going to fall just short. Niners are going to get that first win since 92, 24-20. I think the Vikings are just going to have to play too perfect football in order to beat this team. Even if they don't have Christian McCaffrey, they have a stable of running backs where they'll be able to manufacture a running game. But they're going to have Ayuk, they're going to have Debo, they're going to have Kittle. Trent Williams is going to play. I think they're just going to have to play too perfect of a game. And I don't think that with a lot of the youth that the Vikings have, that they're going to be able to accomplish that. But I do think it'll be close. And the 49ers barely squeak out a win. But we feel really good about our football team.
That's fair enough, man. Hey, thanks for coming on. And Skull Vikes, okay?
SKOL Vikes, baby.